This lesson is on point-slope form of linear equations. So I've previously talked about slope-intercept form. If you'd like to watch a video of that, I'll put a link up here in the upper right. And just as a quick reminder of that, this is what slope-intercept form looks like. The m represents the slope, and the b represents the y-intercept. And so to write an equation in slope-intercept form, you need to have the slope and you need to have the y-intercept. So all of these different forms of linear equations have different advantages to them. So the one we're looking at today is called the point-slope form. And so to write an equation in point-slope form, you need the slope, hence the word slope in the name, and you need a point. So any point on the line. So the x1 and y1 here are a point on the line, and the m represents the slope. So if you know a point on the line and you know the slope, then you can write the equation in point-slope form. So here's a really simple example. Oh, and let me give you a heads up. These minus signs are what are going to cause people the most trouble. Let me just explain that real quick. If your y value is negative, then you're going to end up with minus a negative, which is really going to become plus. Same thing here. So if your x1 value is negative, you're going to have minus a negative, which is going to become plus. And you'll see as we go along where that's going to confuse people. All right, so here's the first example. They give us a line, they give us a point on a line, and they tell us what the slope of the line is. So this is a straight line. Here's a point, here's a slope. So this is my m here, and this is my point, my x1 and y1. So I'm going to label this x1, this y1. And so then we're going to take these and plug them in to this form, the point-slope form. So I'm going to write y minus, and I'm going to plug in y1. So y1 is positive, so I just plug in 6, equals m, which is the slope, so that's negative 5, times in parentheses, x, and x1 is negative. So minus a negative 3 is going to become plus 3 here. I'll go ahead and write it out this first time, just so that it's clear to everybody. So I plugged in x1, it's negative 3. So I should rewrite this. You shouldn't leave it as minus negative 3. Sorry. Y minus 6 equals negative 5 times x plus 3. And so that's where I say these minus signs are going to cause people the most trouble. All right, so that would be the equation of that line written in point-slope form. All right, let's look at something else with this. Okay, so how do we graph something if it's given to us in point-slope form? So we've got two things we know. We know the slope is 2/3. So slope is 2/3, and that's useful when we're graphing because we know that slope is rise over run. But before we use that slope, we need a point on the line. Excuse me. In slope-intercept form, we use the y-intercept as our point. Well, we don't have y-intercept here, but we're given a point. So we have our y1 and our x1, and we're going to use those as our starting point. All right, so again, write this below here. Point-slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So our y1 here is 1. It doesn't go there, it goes there. Sorry. I just stopped making these videos before I've had my coffee. All right, so there's our y value. And then our x value, remember, if this is a plus, that means that the x value was really negative because you had minus a negative that made the plus there. So the x value is negative 2. And again, that's where I say most students are going to have the most trouble. So if you have a minus here, then that means this value is positive. If you have a plus, that means this value is negative. And the same thing is true over here. If this was plus 1, that would mean that my y1 was negative 1. All right, so we're going to graph that. So let me put a little note here first, is to graph that. So I'm going to graph the point negative 2, 1. So that's to the left 2 and up 1. So there's the point that they gave me. Now the next thing is very important. We're going to use the slope to find our next point. Don't start from the origin. A lot of times students will start from the origin. The reason we graph this point first is because that's our starting point. So rise over run. First of all, this is a positive slope, so we know that the line's going to lean to the right. So I'm going to rise 2, 1, 2, and I'm going to run 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3, because that'll give me a line that leans to the right. And then you just have to connect the dots. This is my least favorite part. I even gets to cheat with a little tool, but I still don't like having to make straight lines. I'll put arrows on the end. That signifies that this line continues in both directions indefinitely. All right, so again, all I did is I found the slope and the point from the equation. This is point slope form. I graphed the point that was given to me, and then I use the slope, rise over run, to find my next point. And you only need 2 points to draw a line. All right, let's look at something else. All right, so here we're going to do the opposite. They've given us a line, and they want us to write the equation of the line in point slope form. So let me just point something out. If you had this line, you would probably not want to write the equation in slope-intercept form, because if you look at the y-intercept, you're not really sure what its value is. All right, but I don't need the y-intercept to write the equation. Again, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I just need a point and I need the slope. So as far as the point goes, you can choose either point. Let me write that down. So x1, y1, you can choose either point. It doesn't matter which point you choose. Choose either point. So I'm going to choose the one with positive values. Let's do that. So I'm going to choose this as my point. So I'm going to use 1, 4. And now for the slope, remember, I'm just going to do rise over run. And this line's leaning to the right, so keeping in mind that my slope is going to be positive. So they gave me these 2 points, so I'm just going to do rise over run on these from one point to the next. There's that. And so I'm going to rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to run 1, 2, 3. So the slope of this line is 7/3. So now I'm just going to take those and plug them in the point slope form. So y minus y1, my y1 was 4. Again, keep in mind, if it was a negative 4, this would be plus 4. Equals, my m is 7/3 times x minus the x1 was 1. And again, if this was negative 1, this would be plus 1. And that's it. So you just need a point and a slope. Now, if I had used the other point, I would get a different equation, but mathematically they would be equivalent if you were to go ahead and solve it out. So it doesn't matter which point you use. So that means if you have a question like this on an assignment, there are actually 2 answers to this assignment. So in my answer key, the other answer, my other answer would be y plus 3 equals 7/3 times x plus 2. So notice that this is plus 3 because this was a -3 for y1. And this is plus 2 because this was a -2. So in my answer key, I would have both of those answers on there. All right. So let's look at the last example I have for you. All right, so here they gave us a table that represents linear data, data that graphs as a straight line. And so they want us to write this in point slope form. So all of these represent points. So this here represents the point 10, I have that, sorry, 10 comma 640. This is an x value, this is a y value. This is 30 comma 590. This is 70 comma 490, and so on. So these are ordered pairs. So for point slope form, one more time, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And these forms you should memorize. So I need a point and I need a slope. Well, I have 4 different points to choose from. I can use any of those that I want. So what I need to do is find the slope. So to find the slope, we're going to use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so I need 2 points to find the slope. Well, I can use any 2 points in here that I want. It doesn't matter. So let's use these first 2. So just to keep things straight, I'm going to label these. This is x1, this is y1, this is going to be my x2, and this is going to be my y2, so that I keep these straight. So y2 minus y1, so that's going to be 590 minus 640. Minus 640. And then x2 minus x1, that's going to be 30 minus 10. So when I subtract these, I get negative 50 over 20, which will simplify to negative 5/2. And yes, you should simplify that. So that's the slope. You could change that into a decimal if you want. A lot of times with slope, we go ahead and leave it as a fraction because we like to use rise over run a lot of times with slope. So if it's as a fraction, then it's already there to help us in that way. So we've got our slope. And so now I just need a point and pick any of the points that I want. It doesn't matter. So let me just put a here. Use any point you want. It's probably not proper English, but that's okay. And then I'm just going to plug it in. So y minus, I'm going to use this first point. So I'm going to use 640 for my y1. So y minus 640 equals the slope, negative 5/2, times x minus the x1, which is 10. And that's it. I'm done. Now there's one other piece here. They said solve for y to rewrite this in slope-intercept form. Okay, so we can take something that's in point slope form and we can rewrite it in slope-intercept form. And remember, slope-intercept form is this. And so essentially what we want to do is just take this equation and solve it for y. So this is a literal equation. Let me show you how we're going to do this. So y minus 640 equals negative 5/2 times x minus 10. And the first thing I'm going to do is distribute here. All right, so now I have y minus 640 equals negative 5/2 times x minus, when I multiply these together, do it over here on the side, so I have negative 5/2 times 10 over 1. It's actually a negative there, and there's the minus, so it's fine. That would, you could cross simplify this to 1 and 5. And so that simplifies to negative 25. All right, so we put 25 here. And now I got one step left to get the y by itself. So I just add 640 to both sides. Cancel those out. And y equals negative 5 halves x plus, let's see, that would be negative 25, that would be 615. And so that's the equation written in slope-intercept form. Now here's a cool fact. Remember, for this first answer, there are multiple answers here because you could have used any of these ordered pairs as your point. And if you used a different ordered pair than I did, you would get a different solution here, a different equation. But once you solve it for y, all of them come out to the same thing. All right. So that's it. So that's point slope form. I hope that was helpful to you. If so, give it a like and a subscribe, and feel free to leave me a comment. Until next time.